Welcome to Life Stories, where we bring you heartfelt tales of love, resilience, and the unexpected connections that change lives. Today, we'll journey into the story of Jack, a wealthy businessman longing for authenticity, and Emma, a kind-hearted waitress who offers him a glimpse of hope through a simple act of generosity. What begins as an unusual bond transforms into a powerful tale of trust, redemption, and the beauty of second chances. Subscribe to Life Stories and join us as we uncover how two unlikely souls find love and purpose in the most surprising of ways. Let's begin. The rain poured relentlessly, painting the streets with streaks of silver as Jack Anderson stepped out of his sleek black car. He adjusted his coat, the fabric clinging to him under the onslaught of rain. It had been another grueling day filled with board meetings, hollow conversations, and decisions that seemed more transactional than meaningful. Jack's world was one of wealth and influence. Yet, as he looked around the bustling streets, he felt an ache of emptiness that his money couldn't fill. On a whim, he turned into Millie's Diner, a place he had noticed from his car window during his frequent commutes. It was humble, quaint, and entirely unpretentious, exactly what Jack needed. As he entered, the warmth of the diner greeted him, a stark contrast to the cold rain outside. The chatter of customers and the clinking of dishes created a comforting symphony. He scanned the room, taking in the checkered floors and the faded red booths that lined the walls. His polished shoes felt oddly out of place here. Yet he was drawn to it, a slice of normalcy in his otherwise curated, artificial world. Sliding into a corner booth, Jack adjusted his tie and leaned back. For the first time in a long while, he wasn't looking for anything specific, just a moment to breathe, to feel connected to something real. He barely noticed the waitress approach until she placed a menu in front of him. "Welcome to Millie's," she said with a bright smile. Her voice was warm, genuine. "What can I get you?" Jack glanced at the menu but hesitated. "Just a water, please," he replied, almost sheepishly. He hadn't intended to eat. This was supposed to be a moment of quiet observation. Yet, the waitress raised an eyebrow, her playful expression catching him off guard. "Just water? Not even a slice of pie to go with it?" she teased lightly. Jack hesitated again, running a hand through his damp hair. "I lost my wallet," he admitted finally, the excuse rolling off his tongue before he could stop it. "Guess today's not my lucky day." The waitress, whose name tag read Emma, studied him briefly. Her warm brown eyes held a spark of curiosity. Jack was used to people looking at him with calculation, assessing his worth or his usefulness. But Emma's gaze held none of that. Instead, it was thoughtful, almost compassionate. "Well," she said after a beat, her smile widening, "lunch is on me today." Jack blinked, startled. "You don't have to do that." She waved off his protest with a shrug. "Everyone has bad days. Besides, it's just a sandwich. The world could use a little more kindness, right?" For a moment, Jack didn't know how to respond. In his world, nothing came without strings attached. Kindness was a rarity, often a tool wielded for personal gain. But here was this waitress, offering him something with no expectations, no ulterior motive. "Well," he said finally, his voice softening, "thank you. I'll have the turkey club." Then, Emma nodded and disappeared toward the kitchen, leaving Jack to sit in quiet reflection. The simplicity of her gesture had struck a chord in him. As she returned a few minutes later with his sandwich and water, Jack found himself watching her closely. Her ponytail swung as she moved between tables, her energy tireless despite the demands of her job. She greeted regulars by name, remembered their orders, and even slipped an extra slice of pie to an elderly couple in the corner. There was something magnetic about her, an effortless grace and sincerity that Jack found himself drawn to. As he finished his meal, Jack approached the counter where Emma was ringing up another customer. "That was great," he said, slipping his hands into his pockets. "I owe you one." Emma flashed him another smile. Just come back when you're having a better day. Jack chuckled softly. I might just do that. As he turned to leave, he glanced back, watching her wipe down a table with practiced ease. Her presence was grounding, a stark contrast to the superficial interactions that filled his life. For the first time in months, Jack felt a flicker of something unexpected, hope. The next day, Jack found himself back at Millie's, this time without the rain-soaked coat. He wasn't entirely sure why he had returned, perhaps it was curiosity. Or maybe it was the warmth Emma had shown him. As he slid into the same booth, she approached with a knowing smile. Back so soon, she teased. Wallet trouble again? Jack laughed, surprising himself with the sound. Guilty as charged. Over time, Jack became a regular at the diner. Twice a week, he would walk in, always ordering the same thing, a turkey club and water. Emma began to tease him about his predictable order, and Jack found himself looking forward to their exchanges. He watched her with quiet admiration, noticing the little details, the way she always managed to brighten someone's day, the quiet sighs she gave when she thought no one was looking, the weariness she carried but never let define her. One afternoon, as the lunch rush died down, Emma slid into the booth across from him during her break. You're not in a hurry today, she remarked, wiping her hands on her apron. Not really, Jack admitted. Busy day for you. Every day's busy, Emma replied with a small shrug. Bills don't pay themselves. You know. Jack raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Bills? Emma hesitated but eventually shared a glimpse of her life. She spoke of her father's passing, the debts he had left behind, and her younger brother in college. Despite the hardships, she smiled as she spoke, her resilience shining through. Jack left the diner that day with a newfound respect for Emma. Her kindness wasn't born of convenience, it was forged through struggle and perseverance. She was unlike anyone he had ever met. But as his admiration for her grew, so did the weight of the secret he carried. Jack knew he wasn't just a regular guy with wallet troubles. He was a millionaire, a tech entrepreneur whose life was the antithesis of Emma's. And the longer he kept the truth from her, the more complicated their growing bond became. The bell above the diner door jingled as Jack entered, the familiar sound now comforting in a way he hadn't anticipated. Over the weeks, Millie's diner had become a sanctuary for him, a place where the layers of his carefully constructed life could fall away. But today felt different. Jack's usual calm was overshadowed by a growing unease. The weight of his secret was becoming harder to bear. Emma was behind the counter, balancing a tray of dishes with one hand while jotting down an order with the other. When she spotted Jack, she gave him her usual warm smile. Jack tried to return it, but his mind was clouded with doubt. Every moment he spent with Emma deepened his admiration for her, but it also heightened his guilt. She deserved to know the truth. But Jack feared how she would react. What if she saw him as just another privileged man playing games? He slid into his usual booth, and Emma approached moments later with a glass of water and her characteristic energy. Turkey club, she asked, tilting her head. You know me too well, Jack replied, forcing a chuckle. But even as she smiled and walked away, he felt the weight of his lie pressing down on him. The lunch rush came and went, the diner gradually quieting as the afternoon wore on. Jack lingered longer than usual, his thoughts swirling as he watched Emma move effortlessly between tables. She had become a constant in his life, a beacon of warmth and authenticity in a world that often felt cold and transactional. But as the afternoon waned, the fragile peace Jack had found at the diner was shattered. A new customer sat at the counter, chatting animatedly with one of the waitresses. Jack wasn't paying attention until he heard his name, his real name, spoken loud enough for the whole diner to hear. Jack Anderson, the man said, his voice ringing out. The tech genius. You're the guy who started Horizon Systems, right? What are you doing in a place like this? Jack froze, his coffee cup halting midair. He felt every pair of eyes in the diner turn toward him, including Emma's. Her tray paused mid-wipe, her brow furrowing as she processed what the man had said. Jack's throat tightened as he glanced toward her, his stomach sinking at the confusion and hurt that began to bloom in her expression. The man at the counter continued, oblivious to the tension. I've read all about you. A self-made millionaire. Right. My brother works at one of your companies. Jack managed a tight smile, attempting to downplay the recognition. I like to keep a low profile, he said, his voice calm but strained. His eyes flicked toward Emma, who now stood motionless, her tray clutched tightly in her hands. Her expression shifted from disbelief to realization, and then to something that pierced Jack like a blade: betrayal. The moment the customer left, Emma marched over to Jack's booth. Her voice was low but trembling with anger. So she began, her eyes narrowing. All this time, you've been lying to me. Jack looked up, guilt flashing across his face. Emma, let me explain. You're a millionaire, she interrupted, her voice rising. A tech mogul? And you've been sitting here, letting me pay for your lunches, pretending to be, what? Broke. Normal. I wasn't pretending, Jack said, his voice strained with desperation. I just didn't tell you. Emma let out a bitter laugh, cutting him off. Didn't tell me? Jack. I've been bending over backward to help you, thinking you couldn't afford a sandwich. And you're sitting on a fortune? Why? Jack stood, trying to meet her gaze. But her anger was palpable. Because I wanted to know if someone could care about me for who I am, he said quietly. Not for what I have. My entire life. People have only seen the money, not me. Emma's eyes filled with tears. But her voice remained firm. And you thought it was okay to use my kindness as some kind of test? To see if I was worthy? Do you even realize how humiliating that is? It wasn't about testing you, Emma. Jack pleaded. I didn't plan this. I didn't want to lose what we had. Emma shook her head, her voice breaking. What we had? Jack. You built this on a lie. How can I believe anything you've said was real? Without waiting for an answer, she turned and stormed out of the diner. The bell above the door jingled as it swung shut behind her, leaving Jack standing alone in the middle of the diner. The hum of conversations and the clinking of dishes faded into the background, replaced by the hollow ache in his chest. Emma drove home, gripping the steering wheel tightly as tears streamed down her face. Her mind replayed every conversation, every laugh, every moment she had shared with Jack. What had felt genuine now seemed tainted, overshadowed by his deception. She had trusted him, and he had used her kindness as a tool in his own insecurities. Back in his penthouse, Jack stared out at the city skyline, the reflection in the glass a harsh reminder of his mistakes. Emma's words echoed in his mind, each one cutting deeper than the last. He had sought authenticity, but in doing so, he had betrayed the one person who had shown him what it truly meant. As the rain began to fall once more, Jack made a quiet vow to himself. He couldn't let this be the end. He had to make it right, not with grand gestures, but with actions that proved his sincerity. Emma deserved nothing less. The days after Emma walked out of the diner were some of the longest of Jack's life. Every call he made to her went unanswered. Every voicemail he left unanswered. He thought about going back to the diner, but his guilt kept him away. He feared facing her anger again. But more than that, he feared the cold finality of her rejection. But Jack wasn't one to give up easily, especially not when it came to someone who had shown him what real kindness meant. Sitting in his penthouse one evening, the weight of Emma's words pressed heavily on him. Her anger wasn't misplaced, she had every right to feel hurt. He had to find a way to make amends, not just for her but also for himself. That night, he began making calls. The first was to a financial advisor to arrange for Emma's late father's debts to be paid off. It was the least he could do to ease a burden that should never have fallen on her shoulders. Next, he reached out to a foundation he supported and set up a scholarship fund in her brother's name. ensuring it would reflect his hard work and merit without revealing Jack's involvement. But those gestures, though significant, didn't feel like enough. Jack wanted to support Emma's dreams, too. He remembered the way her face lit up when she spoke about painting, and how she had brushed off the idea of opening an art studio as impractical. That was the Emma he admired, someone who gave so much to others that she often forgot about herself. Jack decided to gather the best art supplies he could find, brushes, canvases, and vibrant paints that he knew she would love. He had them delivered to the diner with a simple, handwritten note. Emma, your kindness inspired me in ways I can never repay. Use these to follow your dreams. You deserve every success. A grateful friend. When Emma returned to work a week later, she was greeted by the delivery. Her co-workers crowded around her as she opened the box, their chatter filled with curiosity. Inside, she found the art supplies and the note. The handwriting was familiar, and she immediately knew who had sent it. Her heart swirled with conflicting emotions, gratitude, frustration, and an undeniable warmth. Later that night, Emma returned to her apartment to find another surprise waiting for her, a letter from the bank confirming that her family's debts had been cleared. And as if the universe wasn't finished surprising her, her brother called with trembling excitement to tell her about the scholarship he had just been awarded. Emma sat on her bed, clutching the note from Jack in one hand and the bank letter in the other. The anger she had held onto began to dissolve, replaced by a mix of gratitude and something she couldn't yet name. Jack wasn't trying to win her over with grand gestures. Instead, he was quietly supporting her and her family without expecting anything in return. A week later, an elegant invitation arrived in her mailbox. It was for an event at an art gallery, with no further details except the words, a celebration of talent, resilience, and beauty. Emma hesitated, her heart tugging her in two directions. But in the end, her curiosity and a small part of her heart compelled her to go. When Emma walked into the gallery that evening, she was stunned. The walls were lined with her paintings, pieces she had sketched and stashed away at the diner, never imagining they would be displayed like this. The room was filled with people from her life, her brother, her co-workers, regulars from the diner, and even neighbors she hadn't seen in years. And at the center of it all stood Jack, looking nervous but determined. Their eyes met, and Emma's breath caught. Jack stepped toward her, his voice steady yet vulnerable. I wanted to show you how extraordinary you are, he said. You've been so busy giving to everyone else that you've forgotten what you deserve. I see it, Emma. And I believe in you. Emma's voice trembled as she spoke. It's not about the money, Jack. It's about trust. You tested me without my consent, and that hurt. Jack nodded, his expression earnest. I know, and I'll spend every day proving to you that I'll never make that mistake again. Emma looked at the paintings, the people who had come to support her, and finally back at Jack. Her walls softened, though her resolve remained. I forgive you, she said, her eyes glistening. But earning my trust won't happen overnight. Jack smiled, relief washing over him. I'm not going anywhere. As the gallery buzzed around them, a quiet understanding passed between them. For now, it was enough, a starting point for something real. As Emma and Jack stood together in the warm glow of the art studio, surrounded by her paintings and the people who believed in her, their journey felt like a testament to the transformative power of kindness, resilience, and love. Emma's trust in Jack had been hard-won, but his unwavering commitment to making things right proved that second chances, when earned, could lead to something extraordinary. Their love story was not one of perfection but of growth, two people finding strength in each other, learning to heal, and building a future based on understanding and mutual respect. Jack had found meaning beyond wealth, and Emma had rediscovered her dreams. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video and share it with others who love tales of hope and redemption. Subscribe to Life Stories for more inspiring journeys of love, courage, and the beauty of human connection. See you in the next story.